Okay, so let me formally introduce this webinar and myself. First of all, we are presenting this webinar as Anglian Coastal Local Network. That branch represents members in Norfolk and Suffolk, part of East Anglia. I'm Ian Buxton, I'm chair of the branch, and I will be the host this evening. This is our first webinar. Normally we hold face-to-face presentations in venues across the county, so you'll have to bear with us. We're learning as we go along. There's a couple of logistical things about the webinar that if you haven't used them before, it's worth just knowing. We would like to leave questions to the end and then get them answered in a Q&A session at the end. So if you do think of a question throughout the presentation that you would like to ask, just use the Q&A panel. So if you wiggle your mouse at the bottom of the screen, you'll get the Zoom taskbar comes up and you will see that there's a Q&A panel, and you click on that and send a question, and we'll make sure that they get mediated and dealt with at the end. And the second thing we're going to try is doing a couple of polls during Rod's presentation. And again, that's an option on the taskbar. So again, wiggle the mouse and you will see that the poll ability to answer a poll comes up. It should be intuitive, and hopefully that will work okay for you. Just before introducing tonight's speaker, I'd like to mention some further webinars that we actually have in preparation at the moment. On July the 9th at 7 o'clock, we have a presentation called The Future of TV, Let's Make It Personal. This will be live over Zoom from BT's TV lab at their research place at National Park in Suffolk. It's presented by two senior BT researchers, Doug Williams and Ian Kegel, and it should be interesting in many, many ways, not least of how object-based broadcasting will work over Zoom, so that will be interesting. After that, we have one given by Professor Andy Sutton on August the 6th. That's in preparation at the moment. He's BT's principal mobile network architect, and he will give a talk titled 5G Demystified, the what, the where, and the when. And I guess if you want to ask any questions about Huawei, he's the man to ask. And then on August the 27th, we have a presentation given by Wing Commander Matt Peake on his experience of the operational engineering required to deploy the RAF's latest generation stealth fighter, the F-35. Clearly, this one is subject to operational demands, but we're hoping that that will happen. And what I would say with all of those events, they're going to be put onto the IET event system very soon, if they're not there already. And that's the way you can actually register for them, and we look forward to seeing you there. So without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce Rod Willis. Rod has spent more than 25 years in the electronics manufacturing industry, working for a global leader in semiconductor test, working with blue chip clients across Europe and Asia. He's now set up his own consultancy on process improvement enabling technology, but he specializes on the people part of that equation. And his talk tonight covers that aspect and is called, Do We Need Psychological Safety Within Groups and Teams? I'm also delighted to say that Rod is our new branch secretary. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Rod. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've still got one or two people having audio issues, so I'm on maximum mic. I'm going to just lean forward a bit. So if you see me coming through the screen, you know why. Thank you very much, Ian. Okay, what I did, if you cut me in half, you find the word engineer in me, but I started to realize there was a really interesting puzzle, that things that would rationally make sense to me as an engineer didn't seem to be always yielding for me in the organizational space. That became more, when I was in product development, that didn't matter so much. But when I moved into merger and acquisition integration, it suddenly changed. Just sorting out a standard process to make people work together better with skills analysis mapping, clearly that would work. Well, actually, not always. So that was the stimulus to go on this bit of a deep dive. But let's go specifically on point now. So what does psychological safety help us achieve? We'll define that term in a second, but let's just hold with that for the moment. So studies, both practitioner and academic research, have revealed that the highest performing teams have a couple of components in common. They all have psychological safety and they all have accountability. Now, I define these terms in that context in a second. We're going to be focusing primarily on psychological safety this evening. Moving down, definition of terms. Psychological safety is a psychological state of being safe and protected from danger or harm. And in particular, so we're not talking of physical harm, but in particular, no reprisal or reprimand for speaking up. So if you're in a situation where either yourself or people around you don't feel they can speak up and they see something go wrong, they can't represent that, psychological safety is not in place. I'll give you the definition of accountability at the bottom here. The fact of being responsible for your decisions or actions and being confident and competent, able to explain when asked to do so. Unfortunately, the word accountability gets hijacked occasionally, but if you look at that definition, that's what we mean by accountability when we look at what is necessary for psychological safety and accountability to deliver high-performing teams. Moving on. How do we know if we got it? You know, it's an interesting term. We can probably all make our own interpretation of what that means. Well, what I would like to invite you to do, I've taken a particular view of it and applied it. So I've applied some of the theory in a particular way, and I'd like to share that with you. But if you want to sort of do your own deep dive research and have, you know, some of the original researchers' reviews, Professor Amy Edmondson, she's out of Harvard Business School. If you just search on YouTube for Amy Edmondson and psychological safety, you'll find several resources. In fact, she's also the author of several books. I would recommend, if you're coming in this for the first time, go for The Fearless Organization. I say she's an author of many books and many, many papers. If you're not into the reading side of things, but you just want to have a quick video, go and look at this video. And this is the YouTube reference. But again, if you Google YouTube, Amy Edmondson, psychological safety, you'll find the video. And we'll find a way of getting these links to you after the session anyway. So that's to enable you to go and signpost and do your own research if you wish. But I'm now going to give you my take on what I thought would have really been helpful if I'd understood this in my transformational change type scenarios associated with mergers and acquisitions. So why do we even need to care? You know, that's a valid question. Well, there's an implication. If you don't have psychological safety, or indeed if it's low, here are sorts of things that can unfold. People may not speak up. And Amy Edmondson's done a paper looking, hypothesizing, would the Columbia shuttle disaster not have maybe occurred if people were able? So there's an issue of wanting to, and then the ability for the organization to hear, are they actually speaking up or not? Next, innovation will be suppressed. People who are trying to do innovation in their companies while not worrying about psychological safety, I'm afraid have missed the key lever. Without psychological safety, innovation will be suppressed in majority of cases. There's a new term for many people here, I imagine, and there is a definition at the back for you. I'm just going to reference it for the moment, and that's called defensive reasoning. Defensive reasoning will be maximized. That means people are going to be politically safe, or only say what's appropriate. Productive reasoning, which is, by the way, how people work together and create and stimulate innovative ideas, is going to be minimized. Guess what that results in? You limit the organization's adaptability capability. And I don't think you could think of a better time where organizations need to find ways of adapting right now. If they don't, they will not be relevant, and they unfortunately will vanish from the landscape. A key component, which probably was a more typical concern people would have rather than survival, is low performance from one or more groups. What does that mean? Well, it limits the value creation potential of those individuals. Now, if these individuals are client facing, you're potentially compromising the value for the client base. If it's internal, you're compromising the value add within the organization. So again, just to highlight, defensive reasoning, productive reasoning are defined at the end. And these other points I think are fairly self-explanatory. Again, if you are interested and want to go and find more information and can't find it, feel free to contact me. Right, I guess we're all engineers on this call. So I've got a puzzle for us. And it's for an engineering mindset in particular. What's at play within us when we consider, do we feel psychologically safe? That's the angle I want to take today. So what's really happening? So how can we explore that? Now, there's a construct or a frame of reference from an MIT professor, so Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He's unfortunately passed away some years ago. And he came up with a concept called the ladder of inference. Now, I think this may be a new term for many of the people on the call, but we just want to double check. So Ian, would you mind firing up the poll? And we'll see if people can confirm, have you heard of the ladder inference before or not? And if we can keep that open for about 30 seconds, give people a chance to express where they are on this. It'll help me also position this next part of the presentation as well. Have we got much engagement, Ian, on the poll?
Yeah, Rod, we've got 82% saying no, 9% saying yes, and 9% saying unsure. So I'll end the polling now.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much for sharing that. It's helpful to know. And let me just show that. I'm going to take a photograph of the screen because it's just an easiest way for me to do this. Just in case you want to reference these numbers later on. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on. So I will go through this in a fairly pragmatic way. And so those of you who have heard of it before, bear with me, please. I'm going to just focus on very high level statements because obviously the majority of people, this is a new approach for them. There's an image here with a head and a ladder and some text. That was inspired by the work of Peter Senge in the book called The Fifth Discipline. Can be a heavy read, but if you're into understanding interconnectedness of things, system thinking, and how that interacts with people, worthwhile getting. I don't want to put you into book overload though. Here's the point. Every one of us, and imagine this is I think this is yourself right now as I describe these words. So it's me, it's Ian, it's each of us independently. We observe external data and we have experiences. We filter and select data from what it is we have observed or we are able to observe. We add meaning to what we have observed. We make assumptions based on the meaning we have added. We draw conclusions. We adopt beliefs about the world as a result of this. And then we take action based on our beliefs. Now, the strange thing is, this is happening in each and every one of us. Again, this is a conceptual framework, so don't take this literally. But this is a way of looking at how we process experiences and data. It can be data on a piece of paper, in audio, experiences, what we're experiencing kinesthetically, actually actions. The purple text here, this comes from motivational theory, which I'm not going to go into, but there's a source for where those words came from. And I've basically integrated a motivational theory construct with also Peter Senge's and Chris Argyris's ladder of inference. Now, here's where the trick comes in. There's a feedback loop. There's a loop from the what we adopt, the beliefs we adopt about the world, comes back into, we filter and select the data from which we observe. So every one of us on this call, unless you've done a lot of deep reflective work, will be biased in the information and data that you accept in, because there's too much to take everything in. So you have to filter. It's just a fact of life. But what you filter is a function of your belief system, which is a function of your life journey. Now, as you go through life, there's different, I'm sure your attitude to the world has shifted. It tends to happen with people as we go through often pivotal points where we have this recalibration about, did I really think that? Oh, it doesn't seem to be valid anymore. So this feedback loop is critical. It exists in all of us. But here's the interesting thing. The feedback loop, back again, sorry, is referred to as the reflexive loop. How we reflexively respond, without even thinking. And that's the point. We haven't thought about what we've done, we've just done it. And many individuals are not aware of the reflexive loop. So guess what? Think of these as scripts that are in play. We each have our own unique program that's in play. It's been formed through the ladder of inference as a construct, a way of trying to make sense of the complexity of us, people. And we reinforce certain things. Now, we're not doing this consciously. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll share how you can actually engage and influence this directly yourself if you wish to. Not an easy task, it is possible. Moving on. But what about groups and teams? Sure I understand. Oh, this is Siri talking to me. Go. That's not very good. I'll turn Siri off. What about groups and teams? Well, guess what? A group has an awful lot of people in it, depending on how you define your group. Hopefully a team doesn't have much more than 8 people, and there's reasons behind that, which I can share in another discussion. But think about this. Imagine you have the scenario, 8 people in a group. And let's imagine those people have come together. They're not part of an operating team. They come together for a particular activity for a particular day. They all come with their own unique sets of beliefs about the world, but most of them won't be aware of what they are. They'll all be seeing and observing potentially the same information. They could even potentially have the same experiences. But the meaning they make of it will be very different. So imagine we've got 8 people now with completely unique desires to take different actions. Let's take action up here. Now let's bring in the psychological safety piece. What you will find is if you have low psychological safety, so represented by the negative, you are going to have inhibiting type characteristics at play. If you have positive psychological safety, i.e. it's supportive and enabling, and people encourage exploration, you're going to have enabling situation in play. Now, for those of you who participated in the scoring activity earlier on before we kicked off the main presentation, you'll recognize these labels. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, please ignore that. But imagine for the moment, if you were to take this table and tick which item resonates more for any group that you bring to mind. So if you bring to mind a group that you're thinking about, forget this topic for the moment on the left, the ladder of influence. Just bring to mind the group. Do you tend to see people expressing single views? One view, my view is the right view, times different people in the room. Or actually, no, people understand that many views is really valuable. And actually, they are truly interested in exploring other views. Do you tend to see the group acting as a collective or really just a group of individuals? You sometimes see that in football, I suspect. Asking or telling. Do we collaborate in that group? Or is it more manipulative? And it can be quite subtle manipulation. Coercive controls creep in. I'm going to try and get someone to do something because I know that's what I want them to do, but I'm going to try and make it such that they think it's their idea. Brilliant strategy. Talk to managers. Guaranteed to cause problems. Are we open or closed? Is there trust or mistrust? Now, understanding, misunderstanding, and finally, enhanced work-life quality or degraded work-life quality. The reason why I've got this is if you find that for those who did the scoring, if you were scoring fairly high on, which were just these items, know that you were probably in the enabling environment. If you were scoring maybe in the 2s and 3s, in reality, you're probably more edging over here. For those that didn't get a chance to do the scoring, there's an opportunity to do so after the presentation anyway. Now, where we come to here is, so what? What's the outcomes? Well, guess what? We get defensive reasoning, which will equate to low performance if this is the dominating side, i.e. low psychological safety. You have the potential, not the guarantee, you have the potential of productive reasoning and high performance if this is what's going on. Now, I framed this as bring a group together who don't know each other. Now let's make it a team who've got a common purpose. You've still got unique understandings of the world. You've still got unique perspectives. So the question is, though, what's going on in the world of psychological safety? Do people feel that they can explore and experience different views, or actually no, one view is the right view? Sorry, just getting my clock up here. Moving on. What about at the organization level? Okay, so we've gone from individual into group, and now let's have a look at the organization. Now, bear with me for a minute. I think you'll be able to hold it, and I'll explain the axes first, and then I'll talk to the middle section. So we've been talking about psychological safety so far, and we initially started saying we experience the world through ladder of influence uniquely. In the group setting, we've also said, well, actually, what we really need to do is to have a situation where people are open, can trust each other. And if you actually take all of the elements from the group dynamic world, the group space we just looked at, you can actually do a very quick proxy. Is there trust and openness at play? That's a consequence. Do people trust their fellow members? The only way that's going to happen is if you've got positive psychological safety in play, which innately encourages trust and openness. If we come now down to the other section down here, if you've got negative psychological safety, it's going to be inhibiting, it's going to discourage trust and openness. And remember the definition, no reprisal or reprimand for speaking up. If you're in a situation where it's not okay for people to say, I think we're about to make the wrong decision or we're taking the wrong path, you have a low psychological safety situation that you're working in. Now the question is that a company-wide phenomena or just within your group? And it's helpful to try and make that distinction. We often forget the group space, and that's why we specialize in group dynamics, because that's the place that people aren't looking. And as an engineer, I like to go back to first principles and root cause. Now, if you come down to this bottom scale, so this left scale, hopefully we understood, or the vertical scale, the horizontal scale, we just want to look at the organization environment. If you have generally an inhibiting, discouraging activity or structure, and it's not the structure itself, it's how the structure is used, so power and politics. If it's anti-collaboration, then you're going to be on this left-hand side, in this left-hand area. And if it's encouraging collaboration, and I mean truly encouraging, not just having it on a board and not meaning it, truly encouraging collaborative working between multiple groups within the organization, then you have an enabling. So now the question becomes, well, so what's going on? And to try and sort of simplify, and I apologize, it is still a little bit complicated. What I've tried to say is, well, actually, look, we've got this individual thing going on with the ladder of influence, and we're all seeing the world uniquely. But we can see, do we have defensive reasoning at play? And if we have defensive reasoning at play, why might that be? Well, it'd be because of low psychological safety. Now, if you're in this left-hand column, bottom box, and it's going to almost certainly be reinforced by the organization's culture if actually you're discouraging collaboration. You're discouraging people not talking. You're just keeping that closed shop. Defensive reasoning is about sharing only what I'm prepared to share without being exposed, because someone's going to take advantage of that. If you come to the right, you could still have defensive reasoning in play within the team, but actually it's out of character of the organization because the organization is encouraging collaboration. Now, in our work, we tend to see this bottom box, I'm sad to say, as a very common experience for people, which is rather tragic. Tends to link, by the way, to low productivity that we keep hearing about. Now, not every, this is not very common, this right-hand area, in our experience, where you have an organization that's completely focused on collaboration, and yet there's one team. There might be a problematic team, but normally it comes around or people disband. So this tends to be a short-term, bottom right, a short-term existence. Up here, the bottom left, it tends to be, unfortunately, the norm we see. Top left, it's really interesting. We see quite a few people here, but not as many as down here. And this is where you have a team that's working together really well. They use productive reasoning. Again, definition will come out, but effectively, think of that as it's okay to challenge each other, and you're challenging each other for positive intent. You're trying to create the best total solution of whatever it is you're trying to work on. But no, you can have a high-performing team in an organization that's innately constraining you. And I have, fortunately, I've come across that. And so this is where the organization is discouraging collaboration and sharing. If you, and a good example is if you've got a software development team who truly are using agile practice well, and I would say that may not be the majority, but let's assume you have an agile team in product or software development, and they're using it very, very well, but the organization doesn't quite understand what that really means. It's this black art that these people seem to do. Then actually over time, that high-performing team becomes demotivated and actually becomes stressed. So ultimately, there's a norming function that takes place, which is the organization would rather it wasn't high-performing, paradoxically. We've seen that high-performing teams can last between 3 and 5 years in an organization that doesn't quite understand them. And at some point, people just say, hey, I'm going off, I'm going to do something else, find the right organization. Top right, utopia. This is where you have productive reasoning within the team. That's what will enable high performance. How do you get there? Guess what? Positive psychological safety, enabling trust and openness, but also supported by the organization. It wants to have highly collaborative endeavors, people coming together where it makes sense to create added value within the organization. Now, I've got here the word agile. Now, it is deliberately lowercase. I don't want to get caught on the bandwagon of agile. This is what is needed for an agile or adaptable organization. So hopefully that's given you a taste. Now, we've got another poll. This one may or may not work. And what I'd like you to do, just before Ian hits the go button, you're going to have 4 buttons you can press. Now, you can actually press all 4. I'd ask you only to press 2. One button to do with psychological safety. So please, either the positive or the negative. As you think about a group and an organization that you care about, you don't have to disclose where it is. So select either positive or negative for psychological safety, and positive or negative for enabling or inhibiting an organizational environment. Ian, can you give that a shot to see if the poll works? If not, oh, it does, look at that. Oh, no, that's the same one. You got
Yeah,
the
it looks as if it's gone back to the, let me just end that one and we'll try again.
If it doesn't, I can capture people's thoughts in a different way.
No, it doesn't seem to bring up the next poll.
Okay, well, nothing like being prepared. We had a sense that we might have an issue here, so let me quickly go back. So if you look at this image now, and we can talk about this in the Q&A section, just try and work out, if you think of a group or team that you care about, where would you put it? Is the group itself working with productive reasoning and itself is a high performing team, but maybe the organization isn't? Or actually, are you up here where you've got high, productive reasoning and an organization that really understands it? It knows how to scale collaboration. Or are you down here or here? And so what we'll do is in the Q&A, we'll just see if people want to draw upon that. So please sort of bear that in mind. And that's what we wanted to capture the poll, but it's not playing with us today. Moving on, bringing it all together. Okay, we're getting close to the end here, so we can kick off. Q&A. So we have individuals in an organization. We have groups, and we have actually multiple groups with multiple membership of groups, and we have organizations. So if you think of a division, 2 locations, think of that as 2 organizations. They may have the same name, but they're 2 organizational structures at the end of the day. Individuals have a unique perspective. Ladder inference is a great way of understanding, but know that each of us filter what we're taking in. It's not that we're being bad folk, it just happens. It's just one of those things in life. How do you get awareness about the reflexive loop, the feedback loop? I encourage you to engage in what's called reflective practice. For engineers, that can be a tough thing. There's some great books written for architects and designers and creative folk, how you might do that. And so if you just search The Reflective Practitioner by Edgar Schein, again, if people want this, I'm happy to provide the references. There's some great discussion as to how do creative folk, engineering, design people engage in reflective practice in an effective way. That allows you to start to understand why we do what we do. So this is about self-management ultimately. Why? So you can be the most effective person you want to be in the space you're in. Groups, understand psychological safety, understand the implications within the group dynamic. Understand it has a direct implication. Awareness of group dynamics is helpful. A starting journey on that one if you wish. There's a free diagnostic, truly no hooks, just a free diagnostic, and that's the URL, and we'll get that to you. Over here, organizations. I was for a couple of years working with the culture and leadership stream of the Agile Business Consortium, and several of us were working together, a combination of academic and practitioners, trying to come up with a matrix of culture that you could use easily. And there's a very rough alignment between psychological safety. It wasn't designed for that, but actually you can overlay this quite nicely. So the more towards the top of this you would be scoring, you are more likely to have a psychologically safe space. The more towards the bottom, less so. It's all under Creative Commons, and there's also the ability to do a free diagnostic. So both give you very sort of first level reports, just a taster, so you can get a sense about it. And you can go and dig further if you're interested in the subject matter. Okay, if you do get into those free resources, note there is a checkbox. We work with several groups. One of them, obviously, as Ian kindly introduced me as the secretary for the region for IET. So I've got a little click button here. Just be interested to know if IET members are interested in this work. We will not follow you up, I assure you. It's really just for stats. But here you get a chance as to, if we go back to this grid here, you've got statements aligned to certain cultures. Here you get numbers. You can do this and be on your own forevermore. And if you find that helpful, that's great. Further reading, productive reasoning, here's a definition. You will get a copy of these slides via the video or whatever other mechanism. Here's the book that it's in. Can be a heavy read, but it's worth it if you're interested in this subject matter. Defensive reasoning, again, definition of, same book. Excellent read. Q&A time.
Okay.
Okay.
First question, Rod. Okay. First question, Rod.
Sure.
And this one is from Manxman. And what he says is, thinking of mission, vision, values, surely a cohesive organization has a common set of values that apply equally and effectively and accountably to administration and staff or members. Member codes of conduct are surely a different, discrete, and more intrusive strand. So it's kind of a statement, a question and a bit of a statement.
So theoretically, I completely agree. Practically, what tends to happen, if we are not aware of our own understanding of ourselves, as in we haven't become, you can have someone in an organization where the mission, vision, and values are clearly defined and cohesive. Perfect. But you have a 20-year-old who joins that company. They only have a limited life experience compared to the 30 or the 40. Now, this is not about saying it's only about experience, because I've become aware of some very wise 20-year-olds. So this is not just about age, but it's about experience. So depending on the experience people have encountered will depend on their own internal frames of reference, which will depend on how they actually interpret vision, values, and mission. So the test to say is, if you think you have an organization that has this, just go and talk to 10 random people and ask them to articulate what they are. And I'll buy you a pint if you get the same answer. And it's because it might be written down, but is it embodied? Is it lived? And often for many companies, it isn't. That's their biggest challenge, how to deal with that. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I'm trying to see, is there a question in there? So I've responded hopefully to the statement, and I can't really see the question. So George, are you happy with that?
I think that's addressed the top level. Perhaps Manxman can come back with a supplementary if he feels he needs more.
That works.
Okay, so next question is from Neville Hazel, and he just, I think, was seeking clarification that in your matrix on the top left, high-performing teams are constrained by the organization, is what you're saying. Is that right?
It's likely to be. So it's always possible to create a bubble within an organization. But the problem is with the bubble, people within the bubble, let's assume that's the high-performing team bubble, is interacting by definition with other members. So it's almost like a membrane that over time erodes. And so that's really the challenge, which is, great, you've got a high-performing team. Protect it enormously, because it is being eroded day by day by coercive actions. It's not that people are deliberately trying to damage it, but it's because the norm is elsewhere. We probably all are familiar with normal distributions. What tends to happen is, if you've got a group that's right at the top, what's the first thing that can kill a group that's really high-performing? Forced ranking salary reviews. It'll kill it overnight. It's brilliant. So standard business practices that have been accepted, some of them which are still in play, unfortunately, some companies have thrown those out, but some still use them. So some of the procedures within the organization will undermine that very high performing bubble. So it's a wicked one. So, but congratulations if you have it. But find a way of keeping hold of it.
Further question, Rod, for an anonymous attendee. In your experience, what are the most effective ways of increasing psychological safety in organizations or groups that have low levels of it?
Okay, try to find a self-selecting group. So invite people. There's a key thing in any relationship. We tend, unfortunately, in the West to go after control first. Like, who's in control? My recommendation is, well, actually, there's a step before that. And the US Marines worked this one out years ago. We haven't quite taken it on board yet. Inclusion. inclusion, then control, appropriate control so you don't feel threatened, and then openness. So inclusion is about how do I bring people together who are interested. So what I would do is to say, well, actually, rather than do unto someone else, what I would recommend is get people to look at the Amy Edmondson video, which talks about psychological safety and the implication for both people and the organization. Ask, is there a group that would like to work together to create an initiative internally? You sort of need to create this ripple effect where you've got a core bunch of people who band together, not to be, bad word, I was going to use the word terrorist, not to be problematic within the organization, but to understand for the organization to change, it's tough. So it's not a case of, oh, let's change the switch. Guess why? You've got the ladder of influence in play in everyone. So, leadership team through to new person coming in the organization. So it's about inviting people to play, in quotes, in the space that what would we need to develop really effective groups who are comfortable with psychological safety. That free profile I mentioned, which is specifically the right way, this one down here, if you just took the people in a group that you're interested in working with, have them take that profile, it's got a traffic light system on it, green, amber, red, and it'll tell you all the sorts of problems. So that's one way of engaging in that for that individual. But it's about invite people in, and they need to be passionate about trying to make a change, because the change won't be easy. Okay.
Right. Moving on. I'm dealing with some of the questions that can be answered straight away. If you find yourself working in or with a team which has no or limited psychological safety, how might you address this? Or do you just need to cope with it or leave?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I would come back to the ladder of inference again. Does everyone want to come in Monday morning and have a bad week? Probably the answer is no, but it might be what their reality is. And it might be that people, because of this feedback loop, this reflexive loop, it's the only way they know how to exist in this company or this group, because the problem can be company, can be group, or interaction between the two, or can even be one individual. I've seen one individual before now contaminate how a group works because they've got some challenges themselves in this space, and it spreads to the group. So I would invite first, engage in, see if the group's willing to start to look at itself. And you could do that through either of these, through either of these two free profiles. Again, they're designed to be used independently because they're designed to be non-threatening for people. So that gives them a little bit of insight. Now, if you're working in a group who really just do not care, and there's no way of stimulating their insight, but you find yourself lonely because you do care, I would recommend you need to find either another group in that organization or consider an alternative organization, because you can't change others. This is one of these weird misnomers. We can't change another person. We can ask them and invite them to change, or point them in a direction that through their own new awareness they choose to change. That's fine. But you can't change another person, and only you can change yourself. So if you see a lot of problems around you, and a serious recommendation, look in the mirror first. And the reason I say that is the things that we often see in others that bug us are often some of the things that we do ourselves, but we're not aware of it because guess what? We haven't actually engaged in understanding the ladder of influence. So I would reflect on yourself first of all, invite other colleagues to see, just start exploring. Hey, show them that Amy Edmondson video. If people think that's a load of rubbish, you're onto a no starter. If it's, I think this could be interesting, then you've sowed the seed, but it's just like any plant. You have to sow it, it has to germinate, and it has to grow, and you have to nurture it. It will not happen overnight. So, sorry, not an easy answer.
Okay, a question from Jan PT, which is timely these days. Due to COVID-driven recession, many organizations need to lay people off.
Yeah.
How will this environment impact the prevalence of defensive reasoning in these organizations, and how can this effect be countered?
Absolutely spot on observation. What happens as soon as you've got people feel threatened, either, let's face it, if someone's being laid off, their family system is now under attack. It's not that someone has been malicious, it's just that's what's going to happen. And there's so many unknowns. What tends to happen is you have the people who are leaving, but there's an equally important topic here, and the people who are staying. Now, ironically, yes, in the current climate, the people who are leaving may face some incredibly tough times, and I really feel for those individuals. But also know that people who are staying are likely to suffer from what is called survivor syndrome. They will feel guilty because they still have a job. So as a consequence, that guilt and also the fear will stay around. Is there another round? I worked in one organization where we unfortunately had layoffs every quarter for 6 consecutive quarters. That's many years ago now. It was a tough gig. And what tends to happen is people are naturally triggered to go defensive. So what I recommend is that's also a great combination for depression and well-being to become a big issue. So it's actually, there's several double whammies here. You get defensive reasoning kicking in, you get potentially depression kicking in, you'll certainly have well-being issues. So it's a perfect storm. What I recommend you do is you find small groups of people, irrespective if they're staying or leaving. It's amazing how much wisdom comes from people who are leaving. Just see if you can get some dialogue going between small groups. So it does depend if this is a large initiative at a company level or a group or just a few people working together. So the approach would be slightly different, but the essence is the same, which is you've got to get people talking with each other and actually sharing their feelings. If they don't share what they feel, the fear they feel, then actually that just becomes a negative energy within them, and it will then ultimately play out in the organization. You can be psychologically safe even when you are being laid off. I won't go into it here, we haven't got enough time, but again, that's a conversation. Why do I know? Because I've lived it. I've been in it, and I've also created a situation with other people where unfortunately I was laying people off. And you get people to trust you even though you are the person laying people off. And when I say get, I mean earn. You can earn trust even though you might be the person making the decision. But you have to be open and honest with people as best you can. Okay.
Okay, a question here from Ian Simpson. I have been abused most by companies with the most investors and people points, as they know the criteria and play the system. How do you prevent misleading figures being compiled?
Well, this is a wonderful case of measurement being used inappropriately. You know, if you put your engineering hat on, hopefully we know that if your measurement becomes a target, you're already in trouble. And unfortunately, and I don't know why it happens, majority of organizations have fallen into the trap of having good old key performance indicators, which are now the measurement, and suddenly the measurement is the goal. At which point you already know you're going to fail, but unfortunately that knowledge is not widespread, and I don't understand why not. It's well written about, it just isn't understood. So I think the answer to this has to be, try, whoever is setting the metrics, find a way, if you possibly can, and I know it's not easy, can you find a way for that organization to actually engage with the fact that if the metric becomes the goal, the metric will not be met? Or if it is, there will be unintended and very typically negative consequences. It's written about a lot. Again, I can find some specific references if that is of interest. I'll have to dig a bit though for that one. That's not front loadable. Okay.
Right. From Sophie Williams, why do you think it's less likely that people are forced to work collaboratively but do not necessarily trust each other, rather than trust coming first before the want for collaboration?
I think I don't want to put the problem of that one on the software industry, but there's been so much collaborative enabling technology. I'm a fan of enabling technology, but again, it's sort of become the objective. Well, we put this software out, now we can collaborate. And the point made is a beautiful one. No, people will collaborate if they want to collaborate, and they're only going to collaborate if they trust each other. So if you want the behavioral change, don't focus on putting enabling technology out there to make the change happen. That's called, it's a bit like the metric actually, it's the same problem. You will not be successful if you do that, which is why, guess what, some of the large organizations out there selling large software solutions are still struggling with technology adoption. They might have sold a license, but are people using the license they've sold? This is a common problem for many organizations. Why? They're focusing on using the tech to try and bring about the change. The tech is only enabling. The question is, do the people want to engage in the tech? So therefore, we're actually into relationships again. What's the relationship people have with each other and with enabling technology? And only if that is ultimately working productively for each other, will it be successful? If not, you can have actually a really good trusting team, won't touch the tech because they don't trust what the tech does. Someone else has told them it's a good thing to use. Disaster. But actually, if, again, back to this inclusion word, if you include people in, maybe there's a business imperative for this technology to be deployed. Okay, make sure people understand that. Don't just tell them to use it. That's called let's create your own obstacles. Include them in, well, we're going to do this and this is why we're doing it. Allow people to challenge, put their head above the parapet and say, this doesn't make sense. Because if someone can't see it makes sense, it either means the organization hasn't communicated clearly what the objective is, which by the way will hurt it in many locations, or it may have even made a mistake. Wouldn't be the first time we've had organizations say something's going to happen and it doesn't.
George, I know that there's quite a lot of questions, but we have been going now over a quarter of an hour, and I think probably we need to perhaps one or two more and leave it at that for this evening.
That's fine. And if anyone has a burning one, say you get my contact details at the end, and it's the IET email I'd like you to use, please. Feel free to bounce. If it's just a question that's popped up and then it drifts away, then I'd be grateful not to have it. I'm not looking for additional work. But if it's one that's burning, feel free to bounce it to me directly.
Equally, Rod, I think there are some questions you can review on the list, and you may be able to type a short answer if you think that's an appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, it'll be to do it live will be a problem for me. I need to do
okay.
People's emails. So I don't know if I can actually truly respond to them once we're off the system.
I think we'll try, Rod, and we'll try and produce answers not live but afterwards to the questions that we've got. So I should imagine there's a way of doing that. We just need to find it.
I'm happy to engage if we can get that data out. That'd be great.
One supplementary then from Manxman. He said, "Thank you, Rod. A thought-provoking answer. No connections here, but how would you respond to the challenge our lack of consensus could become irreversible?"
Make sure I understand that. Could be the challenge our lack of consensus could become irreversible. Okay, so if I'll express how I think that's meant. So if we're in a situation now where we've got someone in a group and it really isn't open to exploring its own development and becoming stronger, then if that's the framing of this, then yeah, I think you do ultimately get to the situation that you have to pick up sticks and go somewhere else. And it's sad because in many cases people have invested an awful lot of time and money. But there is one last shot, and I've actually used this personally on 3 occasions in my career, in my corporate career, and it paid off to my complete amazement. So I'll offer it as a possibility. If you're at the point where you're at the end of your tether for whatever reason, and you're in a group situation and something's not working, but you have thought about it enough where you understand what it is. You don't just have the negative emotion, but you actually understand what's going on. And you are likely to resign as a result of it. You've got a choice. You can just resign and head off and maybe give some feedback. It could be tough in this current environment, but that's an option someone could at least explore. The other is to say, is there someone within the HR department? And I know I've worked closely with HR, and there's some people who can really be approachable and some people that you can't. So again, you have to judge that one. If there's someone in the HR department where you can approach and express what the concern is, another person talking about it could potentially find the way forward, because you should always hold the possibility that you as an individual might be part of the issue, but you can't see it. So another pair of eyes and ears on the subject could actually potentially highlight that it's something you're doing that's actually causing the issue. Now, it's not to say you're to blame, but it's something that if you change your behavior, you could actually shift the behavior in the group. Rarely, if you think of our intelligences, we have cognitive, social, and emotional intelligences. Cognition is normally not where the challenge is. Emotional intelligence, has been a lot of investment for some companies on that space. There's been very little investment on the social intelligence. And that's what we're talking about in group dynamics. It's our social intelligence, understanding what is necessary. So I would urge you that if you're approaching a precipice, before you feel you're pushed over or you jump over, or just walk out the door and get to a different world. Use it as a learning opportunity for yourself. Explore it, play with it. Because if you're not ready to actually leave, given the current context in the market, try to experiment and learn, because you can create your own development journey, and you may in the process find a different answer to what is currently apparent to you as your options. Long answer, but again, it's an important topic.
I think, Rod and George, that's a great place to end tonight's presentation. And I'd like just to thank Rod for making it so informative. I guess from the questions that we've got, we've all worked in teams, some of which work well, some of which don't work so well. And I think all of the points you've made tonight, Rod, kind of illustrate some of the issues that people have. So I'd like to thank you for all of the effort that you've put into preparing this, and I hope that everybody who did attend this presentation have thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm sorry some of the little bits that we would have liked to have done didn't quite work in terms of the polls. We will try and answer all of the questions that we haven't answered on live, but I think that would be an excellent place to stop. And please keep your eyes on the events calendar for our next set of webinars that are coming up over July and August. So thank you very much, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.